What if I told you that the perfect Hollywood couple might not be so perfect after all? Tonight, we peel back the curtain on Blake Lively's awkward public stumble and Ryan Reynolds' shocking past accusations that have left fans stunned, and insiders whispering the image of charm and elegance is cracking, and what is spilling out could change everything about how you see them stay with me, because what we uncovered will make you question the very foundation of their story. Blake Lively stepped onto that stage under the bright lights of New York City, ready to promote what was supposed to be her shining business venture, a beauty line meant to represent confidence, glamour, and effortless grace. But instead of radiating the poise that her carefully crafted image has promised for years, she delivered a performance that left insiders shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Witnesses described her words as rambling and uneven, her voice betraying nervous energy as she fumbled. Through sentences repeating herself and apologizing mid-thought, the glamorous star who once captivated audiences on red carpets and on screen suddenly appeared fragile, unsure, and almost lost in her own narrative. And as she tried to laugh off the discomfort, inhaling dust, and blaming her unease on the strangeness of filming bathroom videos, the moment became symbolic of something much larger, the unraveling of a carefully built brand that no longer aligned with reality. Because in that room, the whispers started. Blake looked nervous. Blake looked uncomfortable. Blake did not look like the confident face of a global beauty line, and those whispers turned into chatter that spread online once the clips surfaced, leaving fans to wonder, what happened to the woman who always seemed unshakable? The awkwardness did not end there as the event continued. She shifted on stage, apologizing for having her back turned to sections of the audience, a move that only highlighted her lack of ease. Instead of commanding the room, she looked like she wanted to escape it. The image of power and perfection clashing with the raw display of discomfort, and in Hollywood, where perception is everything, that kind of crack does not go unnoticed. But the night did not stop with a shaky speech, because outside another carefully staged scene was playing out a line of supposed fans eagerly waiting for autographs. Except anyone paying close attention could see what was really happening. These were not starstruck admirers who had traveled hours for a chance to meet Blake. These were organized hounds with stacks of posters being shoved forward one after another, the repetition of glossy images, and the awkward shuffling of handlers directing. Traffic made it clear that this was a setup, a photo opportunity designed to look spontaneous, but instead, it felt cold, rehearsed, and hollow. She signed poster after poster, posed for cameras, smiled at the right moments, and yet the authenticity was missing. The raw energy of true fans was not there, and the whispers only grew louder. Is Blake trying too hard? Is the machine around her forcing moments that no longer ring true? Even the paparazzi shots that followed Blake and Ryan aboard a boat, where she flaunted a bikini and playfully tagged her husband, seemed oddly calculated, more curated content than natural life together. And while these images were meant to project a couple enjoying the sun, they now carried a different weight for those who had seen the earlier footage, because behind every smile, every carefully chosen angle, there seemed to be something else, hiding a tension, a desperation perhaps, to keep the facade polished, while cracks quietly spread beneath the surface. And that is where Ryan Reynolds enters the story, because while Blake stumbled in public, Ryan was facing allegations that dug far deeper than an awkward panel appearance. His image as the charming, witty everyman was suddenly colliding with stories that painted him in a far harsher light. Ryan Reynolds has built a career on timing, on the smirk that lands at just the right second, on the sarcastic line that disarms an audience and convinces fans that he is the funniest, most approachable man in Hollywood. But beneath that polished exterior, the whispers have begun to take a different shape, because while Blake was stumbling awkwardly on stage, Ryan was facing something that no one expected to surface: the accusation that the beloved actor, once known as the eternal nice guy, may have been anything but nice in his youth. The story broke not in a tabloid, not in a glossy magazine interview, but through the raw, unfiltered confession of someone connected to his past, a voice that claimed Ryan was not the class clown or the charming neighbor, but rather a bully who left scars on those who once crossed his path. At first, it sounded like internet gossip, a random claim attached to a TikTok story, but then receipts began to emerge. A Reddit post from over a decade ago, describing the same childhood torment from the perspective of someone who allegedly knew the bullied kid, painting a picture of a young Reynolds who used his size and confidence to target a vulnerable peer, and suddenly the puzzle pieces started to fit together. The TikTok voice spoke of a boy, a chubby immigrant child delivering papers trying to help his family, who instead of companionship on that route, found himself thrown into trash cans, pushed into bushes, humiliated by someone who seemed to hold all the power, and that someone was named Ryan Reynolds. The word spread quickly because the contrast was too sharp, too shocking. The man celebrated as Deadpool, the hero who outsmarts villains with wit, was being recast as the villain in someone else's very real story of childhood pain. And as people dug deeper into archives and online forums, the possibility that this was not an isolated complaint grew stronger, a post from years earlier, echoing the same memory: Ryan the bully. Ryan, the one who made life harder instead of easier for the small kid by his side, and the timing of it all could not have been worse. Because just as this story was bubbling to the surface, Ryan was already under fire for an exchange with a child reporter, where his words, sharp and dismissive, came across as cruel. Fans who had once laughed at his banter suddenly saw something different. They saw the trace of that same arrogance, that same willingness to punch down that had been described in those bullying accounts. And Hollywood insiders began whispering that the mask might finally be slipping. The man who had been the golden boy of late-night interviews and witty commercials might actually be showing his true edges, defensive, irritable, carrying the weight of a storm that had followed his wife into the courtroom and was now spilling over into his own behavior. Because behind the curtain, Ryan was not just battling fan perception, he was carrying the stress of Blake's ongoing legal drama, a storm that insiders say had left him bitter, frustrated, and lashing out the charm that once came so easily. Now strained, replaced with flashes of irritation and moments of silence that spoke louder than his carefully rehearsed lines. Those who had worked with him before described a shift, one that had been gradual but undeniable, and when placed side by side with the resurfaced bullying accusations, it painted a picture that fans did not want to see. Maybe Ryan Reynolds was never the man we thought he was. Maybe the charm was always a shield, a disguise for something harder underneath. And the shock of that possibility is what made the internet spiral, because when a public image begins to crack, it does not just fracture a little, it shatters, and the fallout spreads fast. Fans who once adored him questioned his past. Comments rewatched old clips through a new lens, debated whether the jokes were ever really jokes at all, and the story of the bullied kid became a symbol. A reminder that the past does not always stay buried, especially when the future rests on the fragile foundation of being adored by millions. Hollywood thrives on image, on the perfectly timed smile, the flawless red carpet pose, the soundbite that trends on social media. And for years, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively seemed to master that game, presenting themselves as the couple who had it all with beauty, family, success. But when the cracks begin to show in that kind of image, the industry notices and the whispers spread fast. Insiders began to talk not just about the awkward event with Blake or the resurfaced childhood allegations against Ryan, but about a deeper change, a shift in how the pair were being perceived behind the scenes. Once they were the envy of Hollywood power players, now they were becoming the subject of side conversations about tension, frustration, and the weight of public scrutiny. Insiders at festivals described Ryan as no longer approachable, less of the charming jokester, more of a man carrying a sharp edge, quick to deflect, quick to end conversations. Whispers claimed that the change began when Blake filed her explosive lawsuit, a move that many in the industry felt was ill-advised, opening the door to endless scrutiny and making enemies of people who once would have been allies. And while Blake tried to maintain her brand with beauty, launches, and staged public appearances, the pressure was visible, the once unshakable confidence cracking under the weight of expectation, and Ryan was caught in the middle, carrying both his own reputation and the fallout of hers. Their carefully curated couple brand was unraveling one awkward moment and one allegation at a time. What made it worse was the timing, because Hollywood loves to build stars up and then tear them down. And when the narrative shifts, it shifts quickly. Fans who once celebrated every playful Instagram post of Ryan teasing Blake now saw those jokes through a different lens. questioning whether the humor had ever been lighthearted or if it was rooted in something sharper, something less flattering. Journalists began re-examining past interviews, rewatching late-night clips, listening closely to the cadence of his banter, and suddenly what once seemed charming now risked being read as smug. The line between confidence and arrogance had blurred, and the past bullying story gave context to what some were now calling a pattern. Meanwhile, Blake's public appearances only added fuel to the fire instead of steadying the ship. Her awkwardness and nervous energy at the beauty panel made headlines, creating a picture of a couple, both faltering at the same time, and the paparazzi photos meant to showcase glamour now looked staged and desperate. Rather than aspirational, fans online began compiling side-by-side comparisons of past Blake appearances, where she radiated control with the recent footage that showed her fumbling, repeating herself, apologizing, and looking visibly uncomfortable. And while some sympathized, others began to question whether the cracks revealed something deeper. A couple stretched thin by the demands of image lawsuits, rumors, and the ever-hungry machine of Hollywood commentary. And into that storm came the speculation about Taylor Swift, once celebrated as a close friend, now quietly pulling away with whispers that her connection to the pair was not what it once was. And when Taylor's name entered the conversation, everything escalated because her influence and her fandom added a new dimension to the fallout for Ryan and Blake. Suddenly, it was not just about awkward panels or resurfaced bullying stories. It was about loyalty, about who Hollywood's most powerful names would choose to align themselves with, and whether this couple could survive the tide turning against them fans who had adored them for their playful banter, their Instagram jokes. Their red carpet chemistry now faced the possibility that the image they had bought into was more fragile than they realized, and the suspense of what might come next kept everyone watching. The story of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is no longer just about a marriage of Hollywood glamour. It has become a study in how quickly the tide can turn when the carefully balanced image of perfection begins to falter, the awkwardness of Blake's beauty event appearance, and the resurfaced accusations about Ryan's childhood behavior have fused into one larger narrative. A narrative of doubt and the sense that the golden couple may not be so golden anymore. Whispers across industry circles now question if their brand can survive the onslaught, because branding is exactly what their union has always been built upon: two stars weaving their lives together, not only in private, but as a marketable entity whose appeal rested on being both aspirational and relatable. But when fans see staged autograph sessions, where the supposed admirers are not true fans, but professional collectors, when they hear stories of nervous stumbles on stage, when they read accounts of a childhood bully whose arrogance may have never truly faded, that branding begins to crumble. And when branding crumbles in Hollywood, the consequences echo louder than the applause. At any premiere, insiders at events began noticing the difference, noting how Ryan no longer lingered with the same ease around press, how Blake appeared more cautious, even rehearsed in her public outings, and how the energy between them felt heavier, like two people performing roles that no longer fit as effortlessly as they once did. Even their curated vacation posts now carried an edge as fans dissected the timing, the framing, the intent behind every image, searching for signs of strain. Because once the narrative of doubt takes hold, every move is reinterpreted, every smile is second-guessed, and every silence is filled with speculation. The situation only escalated when rumors began circulating about tension with longtime allies in Hollywood. Whispers of projects delayed, opportunities slipping, and powerful friends choosing distance rather than association. The very thing that once made Ryan and Blake untouchable, their wide network of admiration and goodwill, now at risk of collapsing around them. The sharpest blow, however, came not from Hollywood insiders, but from the online community that had once celebrated their every move because the internet remembers. It digs, it archives, and it recycles. And when old posts resurfaced painting Ryan as the tormentor of a vulnerable kid, the online response was swift, unforgiving, and relentless. Fans who had looked up to him as an icon of charm now wondered whether they had been laughing with a mask rather than the man behind it. And Blake's attempt to shield the brand with her own ventures seemed to backfire. Every awkward moment, every forced smile, every staged fan encounter only fed into the perception that something was wrong, and the suspense of what might happen next grew unbearable. Would another voice from the past come forward to confirm the bullying stories? Would more awkward footage of Blake appear, would powerful allies step forward to defend them, or would silence speak louder than any statement in Hollywood? Silence often tells its own story. And as Ryan and Blake navigated these cracks, the looming question was whether they could regain control of their narrative or whether the carefully constructed image was already beyond repair. And so here we are at the edge of another breaking point, the kind of Hollywood reckoning that feels less like a scandal and more like a slow unraveling of a carefully constructed illusion. Because what we have witnessed in these last few weeks is not just a series of awkward public appearances or half-baked PR stunts. No, this is the collapse of an image, a dismantling of the perfect couple brand that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have guarded so fiercely for more than a decade. And now with every leaked story, with every resurfaced allegation, with every awkward photograph or viral video, the cracks grow wider and the silence grows louder. You can almost feel the panic in the air, the desperation behind the smiles, the tremor in the voice that is trying so hard to hold steady, because Hollywood can forgive many things, but it does not forgive dishonesty. It does not forgive when the audience feels tricked. And now the public is asking the questions that no amount of staged photo ops can silence. What else have they hidden? What else is waiting in the wings? What other truths are just one leak away from destroying everything? And perhaps that is the most terrifying part for them. The uncertainty, the not knowing who will speak up next, who will come forward, what evidence might still exist. And as the industry whispers louder and the walls close, and you can see the inevitability of it all, the sense that this is only the beginning of something far more explosive, a scandal that could reshape not just their careers, but their legacy. Because if the whispers are true, if the buried truths do come out, then this isn't just a fall from grace, it is a reckoning, and the final act has not even started yet.